Hello.
Welcome
to Bread Ends. I thought you were going.
Bread Ends.
The Christian podcast.
The Christian podcast.
No. Hello, we are the hosts of a podcast. It's weird to say hosts.
The hosts of podcasts.
It's like we don't really get on guests, but we could, I guess.
We host this.
We're the two people who talk on this podcast.
We had two guests at one point.
Did we?
Yeah, when we were in the dorm, like long time ago. We had Austin Baker and we had Sam on.
Oh, I thought you meant at the same time. So
no,
that's why I was
just one guest.
That's what I was confused about. I was like, who did we have two people at the same time?
Never.
I can think of one people we almost but didn't. I'm Noah Price and this is Dylan.
That's my name.
Dylan. We're ready today. We have
today's episode is brought to you by the letter marriage.
It's the word of the day is marriage.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
it's still February.
Yeah, it's the love.
Will it release in February? No.
Nope. We were about to do for the love episode. We were gonna do what's called 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter.
The love chapter.
But Dylan has a great scripture verse of the day. So we're going to just start it off. As always, scripture today is our Bible verse that we like to put in at the beginning of the podcast, so that even if we don't talk about scripture throughout the podcast, we at least have scripture at some point in the podcast. So we're going to start it off here with scripture of the day. Dylan,
I shall read.
What is
Matthew 22:2. It's Jesus's parable of the wedding feast.
This is very fitting for marriage.
I thought, wedding. Let's get Jesus's words on weddings.
Let's see what Jesus said when talking about marriage. When he's talking about wedding, specifically wedding.
All right, Matthew 22:2-14. The parable of the wedding feast. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son and sent servants to call all those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out servants saying, "Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen, my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast." But they paid no attention and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, treated them shamefully, and killed them. The king was angry, and he sent his troops to destroy those murderers and burn their cities. Then he said to his servants, "The wedding feast is ready, but those who were invited are not worthy. Go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you find." And those servants went out into the roads and gathered whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw a man who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. The king then said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and cast him out into the outer darkness. In that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." Weddings.
When Dylan suggested this, I thought it was very funny. This is definitely about weddings. Definitely doesn't have a different meaning at all. Very funny. Originally when Dylan mentioned it, I literally thought he meant the other parable that has wedding involved, where it's about how the people didn't want to show up, those who got invited, and so they went out and got more people. And this kind of has the same thing happening, but the focus isn't on the new people and how it's like, hey, this is the point. Like, no, the point is like, hey, how did this guy that I didn't invite get in here? He's not one of us. He's not wearing the right clothes. He
disgraced his son by not wearing the wedding garment provided.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like not accepting the invitation, but like showing up anyways.
Yep.
It's like, that's, yeah.
You did not RSVP, sir.
Yep. It's like we specifically sent it out, and you could have, but you're like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. So yeah, no, we thought it was really funny as a goof to put that for scripture of the day. Obviously, it's not actually about marriage and weddings, but still thought it was very funny. But today we are going to be talking about not full-on marriage, but we're going to be talking about specifically. We went to a marriage conference and just got back from it, so we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But Dylan, how are you doing? I know we're going to probably keep this quite like short because part of what we were up to is the marriage conference, obviously. So we'll obviously talk about that later.
That was a good part of the week.
But before that, how are you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing swell.
Yeah?
Swell. Last podcast I mentioned I was preaching.
Yeah.
And over that Hebrews passage, and that went very well.
That's good to hear.
Super Bowl was good. That's how long ago that was.
Super Bowl, let's go.
Same Sunday. Preached on Sunday. Had Super Bowl dinner afterwards.
Nice.
That was good.
Valentine's Day? How was
Valentine's Day was good.
Yeah?
I got myself in a little bit of trouble.
Oh, no.
Because with adding in my sermon and stuff, and then my grandma ended up getting sick, so I threw the Super Bowl party for the family. That was fun. Wild. And everything else going on, I forgot that Valentine's Day was midweek and not weekend, and I had work and stuff, and I got the date in, the dinner in, but I forgot a card, and my wife really was like, I wrote you this nice card, and you did not get me a card. So I got her a card the next day, but that was that was a crummy on my part.
Bummer.
And she definitely teased me about it, and it's like,
good. Yeah, Valentine's Day for us was a little weird because my wife was gone that week because she was visiting family. I kind of mentioned last time on the podcast of going there to be with family members who are going to be passing away very quickly, and so it's like last chance to get to see them. So it was a blessing that she got to go. But what she did was very good. She did a whole every day had a little letter thing, so that every day open it and whatnot. And then I got some stuff, but it wasn't impressive. I'll just say that much. It wasn't amazing. So I wasn't in the best spot either, but it was all good.
It snuck up on us this year. Wednesday Valentine's Day. That's midweek.
That's God's second day.
Yeah.
Sunday's the first one.
And Wednesday youth group's the next one.
And the third one's Saturday, because I guess we gotta still keep that in the loop, I guess.
Yeah, other things going on. We mentioned first episode of the new year. Working on some things. Today, I have a interview for that supervisor position. That episode never got...
No.
That episode did not get recorded.
It did not get recorded.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
First episode that didn't get recorded, I mentioned how I was working towards a supervisor position at work, and how I wanted to not only structure my life around being a person that would be promoted to supervisor, but in my faith life and family life, being a person deserving of leadership and stuff, and how God and family pairs into it. And I had that interview today. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That's how life's going. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really awesome, really exciting. Super pumped for it. Yeah. So, but leading into our topic for today, part of our week was going to this marriage conference. It was 3 days.
Yeah.
Technically, it's
1.5.
It makes up 2 days, right? Because it's evening of the first day, a full day, and then the morning of one. Right? Yeah. So you want to go into it, Dylan?
Yeah.
A little bit of feedback, because I was lucky enough that I was given tickets to go with my wife from you guys, which I'm very appreciative of.
It was all for the podcast. It's okay.
It was for the content. For the content.
So Allison, my wife, for her counseling degree, they have internships, and I did my internship. I went to mission field and I worked there for 2 months. That was my mission. That was my, thing. I went on another mission trip, worked for a couple weeks. That was my thing. You have a 1 credit and 2 credit. Apparently for psychology, you need two credit internships.
Wow.
So one is she's working with a gal, observing people, observing counseling, like actual counseling, and writing like reviews on that and like what she notices and stuff, all keeping it confidential, but like learning things. And the other was you have to go to a conference and do a book report and a presentation on that. And so we were looking for conferences in the area and for teaching counselors, and there was nothing. Like we would have to drive to Vegas. And then my mom's like, oh, we're going to this marriage conference, and you're being taught, you're not like teaching how to teach, but there's also like some stuff for like pastors to like how to teach other couples, and we'll talk about that. And so Allison took that to her psychology department head, and she was like, yeah, that works. Like, as long as you can like learn how to counsel couples or counsel marriage counseling from this and stuff. And I think we did get some.
Sure.
Some of it's taking their principles and then teaching it in your way. As you were taught the principles. And so that's why we were going. We were going for Allison's class, and then also when you're married, it's nice to go to a little getaway conference. And then a gal at my dad's church had bought tickets. We might talk about it also. She's one of the elders' wives, and she buys tickets for like wedding presents to this conference to people. So like, we had another young couple from our church that Noah and I knew from college, that they were gifted for their wedding tickets to it. And then she had one extra, and she was going to gift it to Allison and I, but we had already bought some. And so I was like, I have a friend who's married and content.
This is true.
And so I tricked her into giving them to Noah.
Those fools. I won't call them. They don't.
But it was nice because I got to bring Noah along.
And my wife and I were really excited, especially my wife, about it. And we'll talk about it. But ultimately, it was a right off the bat, it was a good time. So the conference itself is Weekend to Remember. That's what it's called. They focus on marriage. Dylan has some lore, some history about them that we can get into. But so afterwards, I got to talk with a person I've talked about on the podcast before, Austin Baker, someone I meet with and talk with regularly, and he and his wife actually gone to it 3 times. And so it's we'll talk a little bit about that also as we get into our experience. But so it's okay, this is actually somewhat of a known thing. This isn't completely niche, but you can get into the lore if you want to, if you want to bring up the history.
So We Can Remember is a conference from the Ministry of Family Life. And Family Life is a side ministry of CRU. Used to be CCC, used to be Crusades, used to be Campus Crusades for Christ. And CRU crew was started in the 50s at the UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles campus. And it was a ministry aimed just at college students, flowing out of the teachings of the time by Billy Graham and the Presbyterian Church in Hollywood was where all the leaders came from. And throughout the 60s and 70s, it grew. It expanded to other colleges in California, expanded to other colleges in the United States, internationally, and then kept expanding to include more than just college ministry. It brought in family ministry, community ministry, international ministry, kids, teens, adults, and all that. kind of expanded naturally. Today, it's expanded. There's like family life at our apartment complex, for example. There's these events that happen, and I thought like the apartment complex put on the events, but actually it's something called Apartment Life, which is a ministry of Campus Crusades.
Yeah, I've heard about Apartment
so
Life. I almost took part in some of them. So yeah,
we
I've heard
have about 2 events every
they're basically
month.
like get together events to meet people and
Yep.
you know, make opportunity to
that we go to.
build relationship.
But the first marriage conference was put on in 1976, and they kind of mentioned it in the conference, but it was originally premarital conference for the workers, CRU staff, and like college students. And then they were like, hey, why didn't you teach us this like when we were married and stuff? And so it became a marriage conference. Then it went international, and then it became family life, and then it became Weekend to Remember. And it's been going on. Campus Crusades has been putting on marriage conferences since the late 80s. Like, it started as premarital and then kept going on that way.
Yeah, long time.
That's the history.
Long
it's
time.
one of those Bible Belt movements.
4 decades?
Well, I guess it's not Bible Belt because it started in California, but Billy Graham, evangelists, that way, movements.
40 years at least or so? That's crazy. That's a long time. So, so that's some of the history about it, leading up into it. So the first day we had, we went, and I will say the position I was going into it was very much like, and I always have to caution myself to not be too full of myself and have all the answers, obviously. But I was definitely in a position of like, all right, I mean, I've done a lot of work to be like, just in general, going into my own marriage of like, what should I be doing? What should I know? What should I be leading in? And like, taking what's it called? Premarital counseling. And like taking a lot of that seriously. And, so it's like, I had some confidence already of what we were doing was right. And it's like, obviously there's stuff we needed to fix and work on, but like, we were acknowledging those areas and we were trying to improve. And so it was one of those where it's like, it wasn't like I was going here in the sense of like, I need help. Yeah. But it was like, okay, I'm going to be open to this. I'm going to try to take in, and try to make the most of what information is. And it's like, hey, they could give information that I just have no idea about. So there was some areas that like, literally the wife and I had a little bit of like a argument, a fight, like going into it just because of like discussing different kind of like problems in our relationship that we want to fix and kind of be like, hey, there is this issue that like we haven't worked through. We've tried, but we're still working through it and don't have like the answer. And we're like, what do we do? It's like, okay, well, hopefully this conference will answer some of that. Yeah, so we went in pretty optimistically. The first night was Friday, right?
Yep, Friday night. Are you living the dream?
Are you living the dream? So we did get like a whole pamphlet and all that. What is it called? Where I'm looking for the pamphlet. So we're hoping to just go through it from day to day. Just go through the kind of like structure the pamphlet and just what they went through, and then just discussing what we kind of like remember, feeling, thoughts, all of that. And so the first one, it was titled the dream for marriage, and like they had 2 different sessions. The first one's called Are You Living the Dream? And the second one was called Let's Talk. And so that was the first 2 for Friday evening. So first one we can talk about is Are You Living the Dream? Yeah. Dylan, are you living the dream?
You know it, baby.
You know it. So the big part of this is it was going down into expectations and like kind of hitting down of like, hey, what were your expectations and and are you there?
Yeah, what do you see in your person, like, while you were dating them? Like, what made you want to marry them? What were you thinking about marriage?
Why did you get married? And then it kind of led into the idea of kind of like the biggest problem of going on for a lot of couples probably is this difference between what they called oneness to isolation. So it's this idea of, are you guys actually in unity or are you not? And it's kind of like breaking down like, okay, where you guys at?
Yep.
When you get in here, what did you, just a reminder of what it was when you came in, and what was it like, where are you at now? Are you in the spot of unity, or are you kind of like shaking and having troubles? And they use a cool scale that I really liked of like this isolation to oneness that has like a 1 to 10 parameter of like, hey, where do you guys feel you are at? And they did a good job at prefacing that it's like, well, you guys are both here. The big goal is to focus on yourself. Don't be going and be like nudging your partner and be like, hey, see, are you listening? This is the thing, because it's very easy to be antagonistic of like
you need to be better.
Yeah, and feeling validated for the issues, because a lot of these issues that do come up, they're very emotional and very personal. Especially in a when it comes to marriage and problems that do come up. It's like the issues are very vulnerable. You're very close, and like with marriage, it's the closest you ever are with somebody. And so to have issues, it can feel so raw and hurtful to extreme points. And so, this was literally a situation where like, hey, just make sure to focus on yourself and start there. And so what I liked about this scale is we could read off the 1 to 10.
Yeah.
So the first one, and 1 is on the side of isolation, and 10 is oneness. So 1 is, I have already pursued another relationship. I hate this person I'm married to, and I am looking for a way out. 2 is, I thought of staying in the marriage is depressing. I resolved to stay in a bad marriage for the sake of my kids or religious beliefs. 3 is, my spouse has done something that has completely broken my trust. I am falling out of love or don't feel loved by my spouse. Number 4 is, my marriage is not improving and I'm fearful it may get worse. We've changed so much since we got married. I don't even recognize my spouse. Number 5 is, we like being around each other but increasingly feel like roommates. I have occasionally moments of connections with my spouse. Number 6 is, I feel like our marriage could be more than what it is right now. We love each other and we're working through our differences. Number 7, our marriage is healthy and we understand each other's needs. We spend time working on various aspects of our relationship. Number 8 is, our love feels young and free. I'm very satisfied in our marriage. We laugh and play on our journey through life together. We resolve conflict quickly. Number 9 is, our marriage is resilient to any storm life throws at us. We are confident we'll have a lifetime of love and are committed to achieving marital bliss. Number 10 is, our marriage is an inspiration to others, and we're hoping other couples. We are thriving in marital oneness that God uniquely designed and destined for us. So, like, this is just parameter, and it's one of those where they also preference that it's likely that you guys are going to be on like different areas. Again, with like focusing on hey, focus on yourself first. It was something that like in between sessions, obviously, you're talking with your spouse, and so we talked a lot about, hey, where were you, or where do you think, and so we discussed about it, but we made sure not to try to fight about it and just keep in mind that like this is where we feel right now. It's not saying this is what it's actually at. But it's still important to keep that in mind of where do you think we're at? What's our perspective and how do we feel? Because those are valid. And so, honestly, like we were, lower than we probably liked. And, we talked about it and discussed it. But it's one of those where getting to see this kind of scale kind of helps. Helps with seeing where it can go down to if you keep the pace and it keeps degrading, or you could be optimistic and see where you can grow and what's the goal you're trying to reach. And I don't know, I really liked it.
Yeah.
So they talked about more stuff. One thing that I hate, I just hate this in general. This is like more of a nitpick of like structure. Is I hate because we're working through a pamphlet right now, a notebook, and I hate when they have fill in the blanks. I hate fill in the blanks. I don't know. I get the idea it's supposed to be for retention, and like there's part of it of like, oh, you writing it down helps with remembering. But like, I don't know. I don't like it. It's easy to get into the motion of like, give me an answer, give me an answer, give me an answer.
Yeah,
They even made jokes of like, hey, the answer's in the back. So those people who are crazy about it, you just already flip to it. And it's just like, they're trying to keep it lighthearted. But like, what I don't like about fill in the blanks is like, I don't know. I feel like it's not enough. Like, I think where I like fill in the blanks is for like a person can actually like ask and throw out like, hey, when it's a smaller group, and you can obviously be like, hey, what do you think it is, and people can throw back and forth thinking about it. But when it's just like, all right, here's the next fill in the blank, it's this, it's just kind of like I guess it's good. I don't know, it's a nitpick. So yeah, they talked about the dream and the marriage and how it's challenged. Different kind of what if scenarios. What else?
And they went into session 2.
So that was
on
it for
communication.
Session 1. And then the second one was basically talking about probably the biggest thing and one of the biggest aspects of this whole thing. Like obviously, like the first one is your relationship with God, and then the second one is like, hey, communication, which, talking with like preconceived notions. Like I already knew that communication's important and pretty essential, and so it's like one of those things where I'm very blessed that the start of our relationship with my wife and I, it was centered around like, all right, we got to make communication a priority because we know it's important. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, it's good stuff. So session 2, it's called Let's Talk, and one of the first things they show off is a chart that has like levels, and has levels of 1 through 5, and it's like goals of communication: build oneness by sharing who you are. And so like the level 1 through 5 is level 1, cliche, not sharing. Level 2, fact, sharing what you know. Level 3, opinion, sharing what you think. Level 4, emotion, sharing what you feel. And level 5, transparency, sharing who you are. And I hated this at first, because it's like, well, actually, I would think level 3 and level 2 should be switched. You would share your opinion before you shared facts. And that's because I misunderstood what they're going at. I thought they meant like the proper way of communicating with other people, and how sometimes it's more important to focus on the facts than just your opinions and your feelings. But what they're talking about is more like the levels of relationship you have with people, and how that's translated. Like your
cliche is
communication. So
neighbor on the street, hey, how you doing?
Hey,
I don't care.
The weather.
Your answer.
Saw the game, and then there's that. Then facts, and then opinions. So it's like you're going deeper with being more vulnerable and sharing
you get
more
to
stuff.
Friends, and then down from friends to
to the
best friends to like spouse. And
so that was more the point of it. And so talking about communication, they hit on stuff of like, oh, why is it so difficult to have communication, and just playing on like different ideas of like different kind of habits, things that can get in the way, kind of things that we all know, but like still sometimes need to be pointed out. They do share a thing as like, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So it's a lot of that of like, hey, let's talk about it. Communication is important. Sometimes we think we have communication, but we haven't yet. And just digging into it. And so it's like, all right, then what should we do instead? And so the thing is, hey, the first one is create a safe place to was there a blank we missed?
That's what I was trying to figure out, because it's not in this one either.
I didn't look. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's talking about making a safe place for transparency. And so again, this is one of those where it's like they had two different kind of like lists of things, and they have two different goals. But like again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, cool. Here's these two things. They have two different kind of things they do, but focus on yourself in this moment. And so the first chart is listen carefully. And so it says, you have 1 through 5 of like 1, give focused attention, put away distractions. Number 2, avoid trying to fix the problem / person. 3, try to feel what they are feeling. 4, suspend judgment, don't defend yourself. Number 5, summarize what you are hearing. And so that's like the first chart. And the reason why I mentioned this chart is because they literally want to be like, hey, which of these
Which of the 5 do you need to work on?
Which of the 5 do you think you need to work on? And so it's like, okay, cool. You have this kind of list of seeing where you're at and being like, oh, okay, actually this is an area I could focus on. Is this one? The other one chart they had is called express clearly. So the first one's about listening and when people are talking to you, listening, while this one's more communicating through talking. So the first one is think before you speak. Common thing they said is wait 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Because reactivity instead of what's the thing he said?
The difference between reacting and responding is 3 seconds.
It's 3 seconds. Stop and think, which is true, but I don't like how you worded it. Like, okay, all right, man. So the first one of express clearly is think before you speak. The second one is ask if now is a good time and place. Create the right environment. Number 3 is share what's really going on inside: pains, fears, hopes, desires, disappointment, etc. Number 4 is beware. Angry can sabotage vulnerability. And then number 5 is ask them what they heard. I think most people agree that on the express clearly, the number 5 is the weirdest one. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those where, I mean, I just did it. I said, you know, it's literally that type of phrase of like, you understand what I mean? You know, it's that.
Yeah.
I even talked to my wife and I kind of hate it. Again, it's a bit nitpicky. But it's one of those where when you think about it, a lot of times I've seen in conversations, it's a little bit not on the side of did you understand what I said, but it's more as do you agree with what I said?
Yeah.
And it's almost used as a phrase to bring validation than actually like, did I communicate that properly?
Mm-hmm.
I also remember whenever I hear it, I always think of Ben Williams, our old preaching professor, who's like, don't say that. If you say that, that means you don't know what you mean. You didn't understand yourself what you said, and you're just communicating that to the crowd which like, yeah, there's part of it is like, well, okay, that's a bit extreme, but it does show that like you're not confident with what you said. You're not confident in how you communicated, which is like, okay, that's fair.
How it was one of the things that my wife wrote down. I have her notebook.
Yeah.
What she wrote down is that she
Jill,
wanted to work
you
on.
Know what your notebook is? Tisk.
Was asking what they heard, and how she took it is there's often times where I'm like, she'll be talking to me. I'm like, why are you yelling at me? Like I just pause. I'm like, are we like really passionate about this? Like, why are you yelling? And she'll be like, I'm not yelling. I'm talking like this. And then she'll be like, well, what are you hearing me say? I'm like, I'm hearing you say like this about the dishes, this about this, and I'm hearing it in a yelling way. And she'll be like, I'm trying to communicate, not yelling, but he's hearing yelling.
Yeah.
How can I fix that? And so that's how she took it. But I think kind of how they were teaching it is kind of the way you were thinking.
Yeah.
As I'm like,
yeah.
And let me stop. Am I talking?
Yeah.
Do you understand me? Where? That's kind of been our practical use of it. Is like, oh shoot. Okay, I'm trying to communicate this. You're hearing it this way hurtfully. I'm not trying to say it hurtfully. How can I say it better?
Yeah. How can I change it for better communication? Yeah, and I like that. I do like these two charts of the listen carefully and the express clearly. It does feel like some of it is just kind of like, well, duh, or it's like, oh, I've already been taught this and I know this. But with the practice of also being like, hey, go back and see which of these are you actually on top of, or which of these do you think you need to work on, it's still super powerful. You know, it's good to have a list and see where you're at and see where you can improve with like clear, like these are clear goals of like, oh, this is specifically a thing I haven't been doing. Okay, this is the specific thing I can work on of And so I really like that for the two different kind of versions of communication of how do you speak and how you hear. You know, both are very important to communication.
Yeah.
So they then led into a what they called halt the drift, and so it's literally like stop so that you can do something. And so it's like, all right, and
stop and talk.
Yeah, talk with your wife real quick about the thing or something like that.
And then we went home.
And that was day one of the dream. Are you following the dream, aka no? I think it's set up as no, right? Like there's not like a, are you living the dream? Yeah, awesome.
Like
no,
next.
And I don't want to say it. I'll save it. I didn't want to say it and ruin it, but we'll get to it later when we talk more about it. So that was Friday though. Saturday was a full day of.
Friday night they had you do a little check-in with your spouse.
That date night.
Or that was like Friday night was this where you took like the assessment.
Oh, the couples check-in.
Yeah.
You had homework.
Basically.
And which had
you took like a quiz.
We were so confused about this and we did this wrong at first, and then we realized it was like it had an app, and we're like, oh, okay. And like so we did the app and got the answers and then discussed it with each other, which again I think is very valuable of like, you know, a good opportunity to spend time together, especially in a way of like growing and
kind of a recap of the day, like
what you thought.
What are the things that we fight about? What are the things that we're strength in?
Yeah, actually discussing those and seeing where each other's at. Very good. I mean, I had a good time with my wife doing that.
Yep.
I'm trying to find the chapters again. Different like segments.
Say.
Try to do this while holding my mic. What was Saturday, Dylan?
So part 1 was Dream for Marriage, and Saturday was the third session of that, the Forgotten Dream.
I see.
And
I see.
It's kind of like more on like, this is what God originally thought marriage would be. Like, we have dreams about marriage. This is God's like purpose for marriage, to model his unity. You know what, it got into like Adam and Eve were made, you know, as in the image of God. The marriage is in the image of God. Christ is the bride of the church is the bride of Christ. God's purpose for marriage is it will impact your corner of the world with your God-centered family. When you raise your children up in Christ, there's 2 more people or 3 more people that...
It was very much Bible class.
Yep.
Here's Sunday school.
Lifelong companionship.
Hey, marriage is a God thing. And here's the thing, as I will keep mentioning throughout all of this, it's all good stuff. It's all important stuff. But it wasn't like this is clearly what the Bible says about marriage and what it's very much in the spot of like, hey, person who doesn't or may not be fully committed to Christianity, here's the reality. It is a Christian thing.
Yep.
There's Adam and Eve. And
what's your marriage have to do with God? Well, here it is.
Here it is.
Yep.
It's a God thing. And, you know, and so it was very much like, as somebody who's a believer, a committed believer, and has done a lot of work to try to keep our marriage God-centered. It was hard to stay focused in this one. I'm gonna be honest.
It's like
was
I
doing
went to
my
Bible
best,
college.
but it was very much a lot of it was like,
I know.
okay, like I don't know. It's again, it felt like the purpose of it was to inform those who aren't fully committed to Christianity, who don't have a real hard put in relationship yet into God. It's like a good start of like, hey, actually no, like you need God. It's like this was actually a big part of it. God was the one who made it, but it wasn't like deep enough to where someone who is already committed for God already knows that he needs to be the center point of our relationship in marriage and is the focus point. And Wana's like, it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't really go any deeper of like explaining what that meant. Which is like, okay, well, they'll talk about it later, right? So like, again, still talking about good stuff. So like they talked about how unity is the model and how it's based on love, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're right. They talk about some of the purposes, but it is kind of like
leave
for God.
and cleave and
it's
love is patient, love is kind.
1 Corinthians 13. It's like, okay,
it's a covenant relationship.
It's like, I know that. You're right. I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
you're not wrong. They're like, yeah, and your relationship should be impact to others, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you're right.
Yep,
I know that. And so it was one of those where it's like, okay, this isn't for me. Staying open, staying awake in case there is something that pops out. But
this was also early in the morning.
That's not a problem for me.
Early
in the morning.
It was after lunch that I was actually kind of falling asleep.
I mean, but just 8. So yeah, this first section. What was the second one of Saturday? So the first one was the dream.
Yeah, first one's like God's dream, and then it went to the fall.
The fall. So how are things messed up?
So like you had their creation, Genesis, marriage, God's dream, and the fall of marriage. How the dream comes crashing down. Session 4.
Yeah, session 4.
And it's like the 3 threats to marriage. Like why? Trying to give reason on like why
do we struggle?
We struggle with marriage. Like
why?
Where are the threats?
Fall back.
Why Satan doesn't want you to have a good marriage?
Yeah.
Kind of continues like God's dream, but like from the other side.
Yeah. So it's a continuation. It's a little bit better, I think, because it's still that's at least more interesting to me. Of like, oh, okay, what is the potential problem? So like some of the stuff they hit on is like shame, guilt, fear, blame shifting, battle for control. Like those are a lot of the elements.
That's all under like Satan as an invisible threat. It's gonna get you.
Yeah.
And then it's like the internal threat, which is like our
own problems, our own brokenness of like how our different things. And so it was okay. I mean, they did have another halt the drift talking. It's like, how do you see your flesh act out most in your marriage? So they have a bunch of words, and so it's like, okay, circled some to just talk about it. So like the words they have are like fits of anger, shaming, avoidances, laziness, jealousy, blame, sexual temptation, stubbornness. There's a lot of these addictions, and so it's one of those where it's like, again, it's good to like write these down to bring awareness and acknowledge where you're at. So like that's the positives, but a lot of this was just like, That's it. Yeah, okay. I know a lot of these. I'm not surprised. It's not like new news.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like that. It doesn't always have to be like something profound that nobody thought of. Sometimes we need to be told the thing that we already know. We just need to be told and brought aware that we're having the thing. And actually have to deal with it.
And then the external threat. The world. The world doesn't want you to have a good marriage.
Philosophies. What is a good marriage? I mean, which like it's a fair conversation.
Yep.
You know, they brought up the idea that like some even Christian families of like struggling with like some of them are falling into the lies of the world. That's like, oh no, it's good to have an open marriage and like stuff like that. It's like, yeah, the Bible says no. We the reality is we still got to hold on to what the Bible says. Like, yeah, you're right. So it's like, again, all good stuff, all correct stuff.
This is where they started really hammering forward, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
They brought in Ephesians 6:12 on like our fight is against flesh and blood, and then had us repeat to our spouse like, "You're not my enemy.
You are not my enemy.
It's my sin, Satan, and the world."
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I think it's good. Like,
yep.
I'll hit on it more. Who I really believe this conference is for.
Yeah.
It's kind of clear that when you look at the bell curve, we are not the majority. I don't think. Like I think we're on the other side. We're not in the middle, which is again still a good thing. Still doesn't mean we can't learn stuff. Doesn't mean it wasn't impactful to my week.
Yeah.
But it was one of those where it's like, all right, we're seeing some of this stuff, and saying the phrase "you're not my enemy" is telling a lot about who is the audience.
Yep.
Who is the intended audience of this is like, ooh, they are in a spot to where they probably to some degree perceive their other partner as the enemy. And it's like, ooh, yep, that's not a great place to be. And so like literally forcing them to say, hey, you're not my enemy, and deal with it and moving on is, it's a good thing.
Yeah. And then we get to part 3, so this hope for marriage.
Yeah, this is where we had our lunch, right?
We had our lunch break.
We had a break. So it's like, felt like those were different sections. So
you guys went home?
Yeah, so technically there's 3 sections, but it's like, felt like 4, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, this felt like the third one. I went home. Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, it's set to where you should, if you can, it's more intended to like, hey, you should probably get like a hotel or something. Yeah. Just like to keep it more of a vacation time, a time set away.
Get away.
With your significant other.
The only reason Allison and I were able to get one is because my mom gave me like half the money for it for Christmas and stuff.
I mean, that's awesome. I'm glad you
did. Otherwise, we would also been coming back.
I kind of mentioned it, but that's what Austin Baker and them did. They got like a hotel and it's a good thing.
But yeah, this next session's the one I have the most problems with.
Oh, really? I gotta remember. So session 5 was it's the session that's the most chunky, as like, ooh, everybody's excited for this one because it has 2 different sessions with this chunk, and it's let's fight.
The fighting one, and
then sex.
Let's talk about sex. Yeah, intimacy.
So the first one we'll talk about.
But before that,
let's fight.
Well, before that was God's power for oneness.
Oh, was I wrong? God's power for oneness?
Yep, they did the bait and switch.
Did they really have one more on top of it, and then they went into let's fight?
Yep. And I don't know if you remember God's power for oneness, but it kind of continues the.
Is it just
like scripture preaching part?
Yeah, this is the one where it's like, hey, you need to get your life to Christ.
This was the evangelism section, which
evangelism is the correct word. There's a
for the general audience, probably good.
Yes, I was gonna say.
I was like,
that's what I thought. Is like
I just viewed it as my Sunday sermon,
Yep. If it's even just one couple who were in that spot, it's good for them. They need it, and so it's not something I hate. It's just it's not for us.
Yep.
It's evangelical. Like there's a lot of couples, and it's pretty common knowledge that there are that typical family where it's like, all right, the wife is on fire for God, she's committed, and the husband is not.
Yep.
Guess what? The person I mentioned of Austin Baker. He was literally in that spot, like for their first time they went. That was the situation, and so it's like, okay, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's what it is. So it's like we're not gonna go too crazy in depth with this unless Dylan has a lot he wants to talk about.
I just have a couple things.
Okay, Dylan has some stuff to talk about.
But yeah, this section, like, it's kind of took us. They set up like, okay, this is what God why God created marriage. This is how Satan like comes in to destroy marriage, and then it's back to why marriage is important to God, and like how God creates oneness with his people. So it's kind of like setting marriage all the way aside, and it's like as if like the first one was about like you in isolation, the second one's about Satan and sin, and now this one's about God bringing you out of isolation to him.
I guess
I don't know. It set it all aside.
When I think it back structurally, I kind of think they should have done this with the unity. I understand why you might not, because when you think about it structurally, what has happened, all right, this day, this morning, they learned about God's purpose and how it's like, hey, no, actually, like marriage, and God did marriage, and it's unity and all that, and then going into how sin and how Satan's a real threat, but also you're also a threat, but also the world's a threat, and kind of like as you kind of mentioned, the sin, the flaw, and then have a break, probably, hopefully discussed and
I'm
talked
thinking
about
this
it.
was before the break. I think we came back from lunch and they were like, let's fight.
Yeah, no, I thought this was after lunch. Let me check.
I think this one was before lunch.
That will make a big difference. So that's what I want to check actually really quickly, because
I think this was like right after.
So what I was bringing up was if it was after lunch, then it's like, okay, you have some time to talk about it, maybe digest it a little bit, and then you're more in a spot to take that in.
Yeah, session 5 was before lunch.
Oh, it was. So there was a break. But
there was like a 20-minute break, but
it is still before lunch.
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
And so the principles are like God pursues us even when we don't pursue him. He restores our relationship to him through Jesus. The gospel is good news for you and your marriage. We are empowered by the Holy Spirit. And so on.
He pursues us. He restores us.
My issue with this is just a little bit theology, I guess.
Yeah. Tell me.
At the end of the section, they did it's a crusade ministry.
Yep.
The prayer of salvation.
Yep.
Which
how dare they not have a baptism tank ready?
I was like, where we can get into that part of theology if you want, but like,
how dare they?
The sinner's prayer, like, nothing the Bible says that like that's a bad thing. Nothing the Bible says that baptism is a bad thing either.
Yep. Correct.
The problem with how they did the sinner's prayer in this conference, and how most like conference and crusades do this sinner's prayer to me, is you say it, you're done, but when you become a believer of Christ and you're a baby Christian, they're like, you said a prayer, you're saved. That's a whole theological debate. But when you do it like in a church, like, hey, you have a whole community around you, or let me connect you to a community, where this conference, like, you got it. It's like there's
that's a discipleship is the idea of
it's a sheep without a shepherd in a way.
Someone needs to come along and be a part of that church. We
fast forwarded to who knows if they have a community, not communities. Like if this is your first time, you said it, awesome. Where I prefer, if we're going to do sinner's prayer route, we connect them to a community, to mentors, to a church, that way.
I don't fully remember if they did it. I know they did it later or throughout, but they mentioned a few times of like, hey, if there's afterwards, there's people to pray over and whatnot. I don't know if they actually, I don't think they preference, but yeah, I think that would have been a good opportunity to be like, hey, please, if you did pray and took it seriously, please, we would love to, there's prayer people around, we would love to talk with you. Like, they kind of mentioned some stuff, but it's kind of like, I think that's a fair point. It's one of those where it's hard of like, how do you do it, especially in this like day and age where it's like, it's a vulnerable thing you have to do, and so for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to take point in that. Like, it's a small problem to have, but it's still a problem. And so it's like, I would a solution I've seen is people being like, hey, stand up or lift out your hand if you did it. You know, kind of those so you can see the person and then be like, hey, you specifically, I want to talk with you afterwards, or something like that, where it's like, okay, that's fair. I don't know. There's different ways to do it. Like one of those is like the praying. Everybody close your eyes and pray, and those who are gonna do it, like raise your hand or stand up or something like that. So it's like nobody else has to do it. So you make it less hard for them to make that step because you're not trying to make the social aspect get in the way of it.
I think they might have been like, hey, text us on the app if you said the prayer or something. And like, we'll send you resources. But those
aren't enough. Like, even the, like, hey, we have prayer teams at the end. Go talk to them. That's not enough. You kind of need to hold them accountable. Because again, it's if you're going to ask that question of like, hey, do you want to commit your life? Here's this prayer. It's on you to also do
if that's your first time hearing.
Kind of push. Of like, hey, make sure
like this is like, a life commitment. It's like, what's that even look like?
Yeah, I know. You know? Be there with them and help them with that process. And it's like, it's one of those where it's like, hey, this was a conference.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like, I don't know. So yeah, no, I understand that problem.
Yeah, and that was my whole thing on this section, was just that point of, like, it takes community, it takes intentionality.
Yeah.
You want to have a mentor or a shepherd for the sheep, you know.
That was the biggest thing I learned was, like, hey, if you are going to, like, do that of, like, hey, you want to commit your life, it's kind of up to you to then do the next steps, even if it is at the very least of make sure they get plugged into someone else who's going to disciple them. Like, it's it's not right to just be like, cool, all right, see ya, and like oh no,
because like at the church I live in a part of, even if we do the prayer route, like if there's something about baptism or whatever, it's a basic commitment that they want to make. Like they just want to go up and become a member of the church. Our church is old style on like, they say like, I'm committed as a member, and the church says I'm committed to walk alongside you, and the pastor says I'm committed. Like even after baptism, they have that like, stand up and repeat this. As a church, we are willing and committed to train and be and stand beside, and
Yeah, I've seen that with baby dedication. It's not baby baptisms anymore, because that's kind of weird.
All those theology things we could talk about that we're not going to right now, because this is the marriage episode.
It's all about marriage.
I guess that kind of comes in with baby baptism. Okay.
Hey, they talked about it. They talked about it in the
session
men's, right?
7.
Remember men's passing the baton?
Yeah.
We'll get to it. That was funny. So yeah, that was basically the one session.
Session 6.
They even go into like the
5.
fruits of the spirit, the fruits of the self, and like
it's kind of like, this is the life that you could live. This is the life you could live with Jesus. Pick.
Yeah.
And that's gonna help your marriage through these ways. And like I said, good stuff. It was the evangelism section, which for people that have been evangelized.
They could go buy books afterwards.
They could.
There's books you could buy because it's a conference and they gotta make money.
And then we had lunch, talked about the evangelism.
Yep.
We went and I had pulled pork sandwiches. It was nice.
Why you had to brag? I don't remember what I had. I had food.
And we came back and we fought. The fight section.
I'm trying to think. We were like, because we went home and came back, I like underestimated how long it was gonna take. So I was like, oh no, actually. So Bethany, like,
I think you still beat us there.
We did.
We were late to almost every session.
You were. How dare you?
Hey, I wasn't driving my own car. It was my parents.
Oh, what? Next you're gonna be late for heaven.
What are you doing wearing that outside clothes? You didn't light your lantern in enough time.
You didn't. Get out.
You didn't save oil.
So session 6 was Let's Fight. It's one of the 2 big parts that supposedly is the thing everybody's excited for.
Yeah, like no one's late to the next section because it's fighting and sex. No one's late. Yeah, little
Dylan was late.
Marriage humor jokes.
Yeah. So they start with, as you think about how you argue, what are some unhealthy ways you respond to conflict? So we kind of hit on it a little bit before, but like leaning into it more, with like, all right, what are some of the things you tend to do, and just self-analyzing. Because I think a lot of people, it's very easy to just keep doing what you're doing and not think about what you're doing. And, that self-analyzing is a good way to understand. You can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is, Self-diagnosis is important. So, like, going through them, circling them, talking with them. What are some of the other things they started doing? They said approach 3 categories of conflict. They have overlook, overwhelm, and overcome. So overlook is to remove immediately. So like, oh gosh,
it's the let it go. Like, hey, I've been here. I can be just as annoying. I'm not going to be defensive. I'm gonna not push their buttons. I'm just gonna let it go. Then restore patiently is like, take some time. Like, it's okay to like take some time with it.
Both people are part of it.
Yeah, rebuilding trust, consistent behavior over
Seeking
time.
help.
Yeah, and resolve quickly is like, hey, just so you know, like, both of you guys are going to be selfish in conflict. Gridlock is when like you get super defensive, so like lay down the defensiveness.
Yeah,
don't
like,
be angry.
You value winning the argument than the relationship.
Be humble, be generous, and get through it.
Yeah.
Methods.
So those are like 3 different categories, ways of conflict, kind of. The most common, I guess. And then the next thing was 4 healthy ways to grow oneness through conflict.
Legitimate concern, legitimate person, legitimate time, legitimate reasons, legitimate way. I don't know if you remember that. The guy kind of, and it was his way of doing it.
Don't say it.
But he literally was like, hey, I'm not going to take any of the notes on your page. I'm going to teach my own lesson. And that was his lesson. Was fight over legitimate concern. If it's not something worth fighting over, don't fight about it with a legitimate person. Don't fight about it with your best friend. Fight about it with your wife. And a legitimate time. Don't like blindside them. For legitimate reasons, like, fight only if it's gonna make your relationship better, otherwise let it go. In a legitimate way, like, don't fight civilized.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it. It was funny. It's like, yeah, we're not gonna.
He's like, I'm not gonna use anything on the next like little bit.
Here's my thing.
Here's my thing
that they didn't do it my way for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good way.
Yeah.
I don't like his other phrase he kept saying.
Oh, me either.
Wherever you get is
I never repeated it.
I didn't repeat it either. We're too.
What you get is what you got. And if you get it, you don't got it.
You get, and wherever you get or got. And I don't know, man. That's okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. So yeah, so learning how to deal with conflict. How it's like, hey, conflict's good. There's good ways to do it. There's unfair ways. There's fair ways.
He gave an example
forgiveness through it.
Little boys playing baseball, like purposely hurting each other by throwing the ball harder, and
how it's like at the escalation.
Cry, but you throw it harder, try to hurt the.
Yeah, the escalation of the.
What are those? What's the game where you literally just punch each other? There's a game we would play in like middle school, like. It's not like the 2 for flinching.
You didn't go to the same middle school.
It wasn't. It was just like it was tennis. Was that the one where you like slap? I don't know. There's many games that's like the whole thing is like how much pain can you stand and like, oh, that hurt, but I'm not going to show you, and I'm going to punch you harder, and that hurt, but I'm not going to show you, I'm going to punch you harder.
Yeah.
And he said that's how arguments can get to with the insult for insult cycle.
Yeah.
I'm like,
just the escalation of it, of like one-upping the other person, because it's like, if I make it out and they stop, then I won.
Yeah.
You know, kind of focus on. You easily get focused on the argument too much, to where it's like you're focused on winning the argument, not actually the resolution of, you know, the oneness of the partner and us coming together. So, which is fair. I mean, it's very correct. It's very true.
Their resolution was Christ-like on give them a blessing when they're trying to hurt you, just let it go, or be like, it's
other
okay.
stuff too, but that one was also like give them a blessing, which is like, oh, his example was good. He used the example of him lashing out in anger and breaking a thing, and her kind of like,
just
instead of
pretending it didn't happen,
and like gave space, and then when he came to approach to apologize, she was just like, hey, I know you're a great person, and I know you're amazing, you're going through a lot, and through that she gave a blessing.
Reconcile.
So it's like, okay, that makes sense. When you just hear like, give him a blessing, it's just like, what? All right, I mean, I guess
they hit you on the cheek, then you kiss their cheek.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought we were just supposed to turn the cheek. I don't kissing. All right. But they had that. They then had, what was the couple's check-in? What was our like sit down for this one?
Identify an issue that could be resolved this weekend, or you can start the process of reconciliation, and you fold it up piece of paper and you put it in a bowl.
And prayed about it.
Yep.
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah. You just kind of write down an issue. And then
where
decide
both
on
of you guys agree on an issue you guys want to
commit to solving
to, and you're
resolving,
writing it down and giving it to God is literally the thing. It's like, okay, no, that's cool. And then
we got the sex talk.
We got the sex talk. Session 7. Let's talk about sex. I'm gonna be honest. I was a little bit disappointed by the conflict. Already by conflict, I was a little bit disappointed.
I was like, okay, that's it. 20-minute session.
I thought we were gonna go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Huh? All right.
I still got some unresolved issues here.
I thought we were gonna talk about certain conflicts, maybe certain situations that commonly come up.
We didn't even use half the notes.
You know, but all right, we'll go for it. We just talked about how to deal with conflict, not some of the conflicts. All right. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Section 7. They wouldn't do that again, would they? All right. So first off, they talk about how God dreamed up the idea of sex.
Yep.
Which is an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting way.
It's basically like God made sex for good reasons.
I mean, which is true.
Yep.
I mean, you could have just said sex is a God-made thing.
Yeah. Dreamed up the idea.
Dreamed up the idea of sex.
It's all about dreams. That's their whole theme.
It's a weird fantasy.
It's like,
I guess. I don't know.
It just,
Yeah, okay.
You have your Song of Solomon here in the corner.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Whenever they used
the ... dots because they didn't finish the verse.
They was this one that they used the most scripture? In a lot of these they didn't use that much scripture. But there was, I can't tell if it's this one or if it was like the last one.
I think the last one, and then also they like evangelism setup.
Yeah.
Kind of used.
Where they use a bunch.
Yep.
I mean, it still has the same problem that I don't like, of like a lot of them are kind of like weird snippets.
Yeah.
But you know. Yeah. It's at least better than no scripture for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like this podcast.
What? Scripture was great. Shut up. It was so good. But yeah, no, the weird little side thing of the Song of Solomon was like, my beloved is mine, and I am his. That's the snippet you want to pull? That's it? What's the next part? ... afterwards. That's worrying. So they're like, all right, God dreamed up sex. It's for mutual pleasure. It's for procreation. as a bond between a husband and wife, as a physical picture of spiritual reality. So, again, one of those things where, like, hey, good information. I could easily see somebody not knowing this, but as somebody who has taken multiple Boise Bible College classes that are like, hey, Christian life, here's the basics of a Christian life, and one of them is like, hey, when you have sex with somebody, yeah, you create a bond with each other, and it's very harmful if you have sex with other people before marriage, because it's like you are literally stripping off a bond of you. There's a specific chemical stuff.
Yep.
So it's like, it's all good information, but it's information I've heard. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, I'm not trying to be above it or anything. Like, again, when we're slowly creating what we think is the intended audience of this, you know, it creates a picture of like, oh yeah, somebody that probably doesn't know that, like, maybe hasn't been taught. All they've seen is the opposite of like, you know, this, you know, it's true. It is for mutual pleasure. One, you know, that's not a worldly thing. You know, and they talk about it as we go into how it's very much worldly. It's a selfish thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, no, this is that more intended goal. This is what it was. So it's like, okay, it's, you know, it's good to put that out. And then it's like, our views about sex are often informed by a variety of myths. It's kind of what I was already mentioning of like, hey, you know, the secular view of sex is wrong. It's just like, it's misused, just like most things. And so it's like, okay, we got to keep in mind what actually God says about it. And then they got into sex will affect throughout your married life by variety of factors. So different things that will come in and actually, you know, cause the conflict of sex. And so it's like physical conditions of like, you know, people either getting injured or things not working of body parts that can just mentally mess with you. As we talked about, the second one is mental well-being, emotional health, spiritual condition, like all of these other things that can impact sex, which again, I thought this one was pretty good because it's like, yeah, again, it's something that you don't think of, but it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That could easily affect you of coming together and being one. Just something that, like, through outside of pressures or issues and stress, like that can easily be an issue with coming together and being vulnerable in this way. So they went into another spot that's like, be a better lover by understanding your spouse. Kind of fitting in the same through line of what they're going to be doing. And it's like, hey, just understand each other. Yeah. And understanding. And so, so they had a segment where it's like, this is men and women. Here's some broad terms of what it tends to be, but they made a point of like, hey, it
can be
this doesn't
different.
Represent all men and women,
and it could be a scale. It could be this way on Tuesday and not this way on Wednesday.
Yeah, and like as you grow through years, it could change. Yeah, and it's like, okay, cool. Again, it's one of those where
this is a section where I think the information on the page is good. The way it was presented was really awkward for me. It wasn't just like the words and stuff. It was just like the dynamic was like, I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
Off to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was more humorous because like obviously the speaker for this one, they had two groups of speakers. So they had one speaker where it's one guy saying stuff, and then it was a couple.
Husband and wife. Yeah.
And so the husband and wife did this one, and so when they're sharing it, and they've shared through several different ones. They've done this kind of like conference several times, but you know, sometimes it happens where it's like you're talking about sex and you know you're talking about it in front of a bunch of people. Yeah, I understand why that can be nervous. And so you know the woman was kind of cracking up of like getting flustered and nervous about stuff. And so I don't know, I think that kind of broke it up for me. So it's like kind of whatever, but I was focused on it. I mean, they were clearly an example of like, hey, yeah, some of these are actually different for us, and it's like we're an example of that. And so it's like, okay, that's cool. And this was, for me, this was one of those where it's like, you know, it's good to see it. It's good to know that this is the thing and the validation of a thing. So, like, what's coming up is actually probably the biggest thing that I actually loved about this conference was, like, some of this information I had no idea. or if I had some kind of idea of it, like I didn't have the clear-cut validation. And so like to actually have it like, hey, no, this is accurate. Like this is how it is. And that's okay. Is good to hear. Just through, again, the factors of the outside world and what they say sex and being close with one another actually looks like. You know, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
You know, you can get cluttered with the expectation. And they even brought up that kind of idea of like, we'll get into it, but of like, what do you see in movies? How is it always portrayed? And how it's like, that's actually not really likely the actual reality of it. And it's like, that's okay. So some of the things that this chart says is like attitude. So it has like men are compartmentalized and women are more holistic. A lot of these aren't just sex focused either.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of these are like just showcasing that like, hey, men and women are different. The common thing is like women have a spaghetti brain that are like they're always thinking about multiple things at the same time, and men have their boxes. They have a box and then they close the box and open up a new box, and that's kind of like you know, it's like that's like the common thing. And women are more emotionally driven and want security and need to feel closer before sex. Men need to be physically driven, want to be desired, feel closer after sex. So just some of these things where it's like a big part of this, and the big part of the conference is self and analyzing where you're at.
Yep.
And getting awareness of the other things, like where you are, where you could be. And like, you know, I think this is another example of this where it's like, hey, here's a lot of these different things that's like, this is where you could be. You could be on the scale, and they even said as they are different, being able to talk about it and be like, oh, we are different, then the other person can work towards unity in that way. What are the other things? 4 ingredients for a satisfying love life. We got companionship. Are we pursuing one another? Commitment. Are we instilling trust? Passion. Are we romancing each other? And spiritual intimacy. Are we pursuing God together? Any thoughts, Dylan?
Sounds like a good 4-point sermon.
Yep. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
they kept saying the way to divorce-proof your marriage.
Oh yeah,
is to read the Bible together, pray together,
so
go to church together, and talk to each other, and go on dates.
Yeah, he was like, make sure you talk 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Go on a date once a week.
And then once a month,
pray together. Yeah.
Go to the church together.
Yeah.
And you'll divorce-proof your
marriage.
And
then there's probably people in the crowd that did all that, and it still isn't working right now, and they're like,
or it's like, okay, yeah,
proof.
I get divorce proof, but like, I still want to grow my relationship.
It's like, so statistically, the likelihood is lower, but still, like,
this is kind of similar to like the baptism topic thing.
Yeah.
It's like when you talk about divorce, I thought divorce is for abuse. For like that was the point of divorce, not for if we don't think it's working. Right? Like that's
they skated around the abuse topic.
Yeah, they didn't.
They had resources in the back of the book and like mentioned it.
Whenever they brought up, they mentioned abuse a few times, and you know they made the
same
point
with
every time it came up. They're like, hey, if you are in this, do this. Please actually get help. Like this is a situation that you need help in.
Yeah.
If there's abuse. So like they made a point, but like they didn't talk about it. They didn't really go in depth of what that looked like, which is. Yeah, again, that's kind of the problem with a lot of this is they don't go that deep. They don't go too crazy in the description and examples and whatnot. It's like, and part of me is like, is this just because it's a conference and that's just kind of what to expect?
We'll talk about it.
Or what?
We'll talk about it.
So, but yeah, that was one of the things I didn't like was like, all right, I mean, the worldly view of divorce is just, you can get a divorce, whatever.
Don't work for me no more.
Yeah, it's whatever.
See ya.
if you're not feeling it, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
Bye.
the Bible doesn't really say that.
Yeah.
And so I where I'm standing, from my knowledge, from my research, you should only get a divorce if it's like sexual abuse or abuse in general. Like that was the point of divorce, and you should be working together to make it work. Like even if you the common term is like fall out of love or whatever, like the Bible doesn't say you should get a divorce because of that. You still work together, and in a lot of sense, through a lot of the stuff we're talking about here in the conference, what they covered, and being a Christian and following God, you might have struggles and conflict with some of this. You might slip in some of these areas. As we talked about, the one of the threats is the world, Satan, and you. A lot of that will cause that drifting and can cause that. But as a Christian and through what we're called, like, you shouldn't get into that. Like, you should be able to still fight through that. The next thing they talked about was protects God's gift of sex. Yeah. So they're talking about, again, the worldly side of like, hey, make sure you have boundaries.
Watch what you look at.
Yeah, don't
run away from temptation.
Don't look at porn, all that stuff.
Don't cheat on your spouse. Confess to the right people. Do whatever it takes to stay faithful.
Yeah, it still needs to be like confess to your wife, basically, is the thing. Like, hey, don't just go around talking to other people about the problem. Like, no, like talk to your wife about it.
Yeah.
And so it's like counterfeits. Don't settle for the lies. Like, settle for what God has said marriage is about. And that was it.
And here's where I'm gonna run into issues using my wife's notes.
Oh gosh, because next section is the
men only section. So we had a date that night. I guess we can talk about the date and stuff.
That was Saturday. Yep. Again, I was hoping they would go deeper. I wish they would have gone into it. Look, I've had more sermons that have been more, I guess, graphic.
Yeah.
Explicit about like when they talked about love and marriage. They've been like, no, we were able to do this. Like
by Cody Christensen at the college, we've had
that's what I'm saying.
Chapel sermons more
graphic
based on the biblical
more
view of sex than
so I was very disappointed because I was like, all right, maybe I can learn some stuff. All right, like I don't know, I'm a young man. I can I haven't done much marriage. I'm open. You guys got years of experience. Tell me the joys of Christian living. That was it. So it was like, all right, okay. I mean, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that.
This is where they sent us out on a date.
So and end of Saturday, that last one, they're like, all right, they want you to do a date. They have some things put in. You have to write a love letter. Didn't do that till after the conference. I did like that they made a point of like, hey, if you're not in a place, like they put down boundaries that don't feel pressured in a lot of ways. Still have the date, but don't feel pressured for more than just the date. Yeah. And so like I think they did a good job of like preferencing that for like if you are in the situation where it's like it's pretty common for some of the families that are coming to what's called this conference, they might have already have started or have thought about doing the divorce papers. So it's like, okay, no, they're in a rough spot. They might not want to go on a date and be super close, but it's like, okay, still go on the date. And so we did it. We went on the date. Your family members gave us some gift cards to the Cheesecake Factory. Woo! So we went. We had a good time. Trying to remember everything.
I was like, what was funny is we were all gonna go at the same time, and like get separate tables, obviously, because it's a date thing. But like,
it would be kind of
be like go at the same time.
We all sat together,
and then like I couldn't find reservations for all that, and so my parents made a reservation and went at the same time as you guys. Yeah, and apparently you guys only had a 10-minute wait.
I was surprised it wasn't busy. It like Saturday night.
We probably all could have, but My wife and I, we did the late night.
Nice.
We went at 7:45, I think, or something like that. It was a late dinner. I was really hungry.
That's fair.
Filled up on all those bread.
Yeah, that was the perfect
bread
time for us
ends.
to eat bread ends. So we had, at this point, we had just bought some books. We bought one book, and we bought convo cards. And our plan was to use the conversation cards. They're like just a 52 cards, so you can still play them as a game, but each one has like a little question on them. Just like asking the partner a generic thing. I don't know. Like we long time ago we had pod decks, right?
Yep.
And I think it's very much the same quality of thing. Like they had a few would you rather stuff. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. We paid how much money for this? Okay. But I did it because I wanted to show my wife that I'm committed to us to grow and get better. Because, like, you know, we had areas to improve. And so I wanted to get rid of all doubt. And so let me get one of the questions that we had. What is your favorite non-physical feature about yourself? So that's a little bit more personal. But that's about yourself. That's not even about the spouse. So that's
my brain.
Yeah, I don't know.
Love
that's kind of weird. My wife gave me. She's like, "Are you gonna be saying your muscles?" I'm like, "Yeah, my muscles. My so big muscles." So what is another one? Would you rather live without the internet or without any air conditioning or heating? So like, that's kind of that's a whatever.
Would you rather?
That's kind of like okay. But there's one that's like, what's the best piece of advice you ever received and how has it impacted your life? Some of them were really awkward because they're like, hey, what was the most scared you've ever been at home or something like that? And it was just like, hey, I don't, okay.
Back to talking about the abuse situation.
Which some family members might need to talk about it.
Yeah,
but like it's one of those like,
oh my,
we were having a good groove and then we brought up that one. I'm like, well, you know. Let's talk about it. And you're like, oh, okay. Oh, bread rules, eh? But the problem was we bought these for the date and we didn't even use them at the date. We used them for, we'll get into it later, but our other date.
Other date?
Yeah. So, but that was a good date. We had a good time. I wouldn't say anything crazy, but it was just us being optimistic and sharing about our thoughts. Going through we didn't do our love letters yet. We decided to do it like when we got back home. Like I guess the idea was you either gave the love letters at the date or they said you could give the next morning. So that's what we did.
We didn't do our love letters till the day after the conference.
Oh, well, at least you guys did it.
Yeah,
that's good.
But it took a little bit.
Which love
it was another,
cool.
Remember when my wife was like, you didn't give me a Valentine's Day card? Same thing when I got home. She's like, hey, we haven't done the love letters yet. I was like, I am planning on it.
I was like, hey, so what do we do with these love letters? Where's this at?
Yeah, she was.
Normally I'm the one who forget to do stuff like that.
I was like,
pretty good at it.
I kind of pulled the campy. I was like, well, I'm just waiting to, on your first day back to work after this, you can have some encouragement, and that's what we did it for. But
nailed it.
She was a little disappointed that we weren't finding time, but we were busy and tired. I didn't realize how tired sitting can make someone.
Yeah,
I haven't been to school in a long time.
You'd think talking about fighting and sex would make it not war. It was okay. So that was Saturday, and then Sunday was the last day, and they had it broken up to where they had two sessions. First,
there was an optional session that I don't think either of us went to.
There was a first session about blended families, so like step families, stuff like that. Which, hey, good topic. People need to know about it.
I don't have comment because I didn't go. Yeah.
I didn't go because I've kind of similar with all the other things. I had a good idea already.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I think I'm good.
We thought about going from my wife's so she could write something else for her class, and then we did.
Yeah, my wife and I decided to stop at Starbucks and have a little get together in the mornings.
Oh, nice.
So That's what we did.
Yeah.
And then so the first session is just men's, it's man to man, and then like after that one, there's going to be like a woman one.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's one last session that we'll get.
I forget about that one.
Yeah, you know why? We'll get into it. All right, so the first one is man to man.
So our wives went to a coffee shop together.
Yeah, they did.
It's kind of not awkward. Yeah, it was my mom and our wives went to. It is funny.
It's cool.
My mom throughout the whole conference was like, "Sit as far away from me as you can, especially for the sex talk."
That was funny, which is fair.
She's like,
"It's very
get
fair.
Away."
Good boundaries.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. Ugh. So,
but they went
and got
coffee shop, and Noah and I sat and we did the man-to-man talk.
Yeah, we did. So it's like, all right, it starts off with like, love your wife by following Jesus.
You are the spiritual head of the family.
Yeah, it's not about you being perfect, man, but following a perfect man. You're
Jesus.
supposed to follow Jesus.
Yep. Pass that baton.
I'm remembering some of this, and I was disappointed by this one too. There's a lot of disappointment.
I really want it. So they kind of talked about like the husband effect, which in intercultural study, or the dad effect, which in intercultural studies is like a very important thing. Because like you said, in a lot of cultures and a lot of families, the mom's on fire for Jesus and the dad's like, whatever, honey.
Yep.
And they talked about like
9 to 5,
when
do whatever I want.
A mom like has spiritual influence on the kids and is driving them to go to church. 1 in 4 statistically will stay with the faith. Mm-hmm. But if a dad is involved and drive, it's 3 out of 4 is the statistics and stuff.
Yeah.
But I really wanted him to hit hard on the men and like, you are the leader.
Yeah.
And stuff. And it was just kind of like, hey, follow Jesus if you want.
It was very much just like, follow Jesus. You need to be the leader. You need to be the headship. This is what the headship means in basic terms. Not
she is your military ally.
It's just like your wife follows you into sin. It's like, okay, biblical headship does not mean your wife is inferior and has lost an identity.
Yeah.
Like hitting on the how you guys are not equals but different. Which is like, okay, that's
important.
People didn't know. A lot of people don't know that. But like I know that now. And I want more. I want more, Dylan.
I know.
I know that we're both equal and have value, but have different purposes and like different roles. But
my dad
want to know those roles. I thought we would get deeper into those roles. That's what I would like to do.
My dad was telling me like similar to you and I, but he was also like, this is really important for certain people, because he's like, he's actually going through another marriage conference. He's going through Love and Respect weekly with his church right now.
Cool.
Not leading it, but he's the pastor, so he's there.
Yeah.
And stuff, and they watch your videos. But he's like, there's some men that are kind of jerks to their wives that need to hear like, hey, the submit passage is not about that. The like helper and head is not about like you lord over her and stuff. Yeah. And so, like, I'm sure for some people, it was nice. But
you still need to hear that.
You can hear that and go deeper.
Tell me that, and then tell me more.
Yeah,
like go in depth. Like this is a.
I don't know. I like to feel the pain of conviction. Maybe I'm a masochist, spiritual masochist.
Look,
but
I want to.
I want my heart to hurt.
I want to grow and have awareness, and like, please tell me. I would like to know more, because I don't. That's the thing, is I would like to have more information, because they're like, all right, biblical headship means submitting yourself to God's leadership in your home, sacrificing, serving your wife like Jesus served the church, seeking unity with your wife on decisions and direction. And the closest one they explained that one of like, you're not the one who makes the final decision. If you take her input and all that, but you don't. You're not the final decision, but then they didn't. Yeah. They still left it up as if like, but you do still? Like, it's not, I don't know. Like, the attitude obviously makes sense of like, all right, she's a part of it. But like, a lot of this turned into the point of this is, hey, men, serve your wife.
Yeah.
That was it. It was literally just like, put your wife first.
I was like, there was two,
that was kind
points,
of
and like first point's like serve your wife. Second point is the baton, which we'll get into.
the baton was funny. I thought that was funny. Which, I mean, I more think it's funny because of a different reason than more of its intended usage, but it was still like, that's funny.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah, so a lot of it is like, love your wife by nourishing and cherishing her. It talks about how you're supposed to die to yourself, pray for her, continue pursuing her. Again, a lot of stuff we kind of already heard, but we kind of already know. And it's like, never mistreat her. Be faithful in every area. Guard your eyes. Like, we already heard that, but okay. And it's like, love your wife.
Whole video on that.
Yeah, I know. Love your wife by being a student of her. What does she think about? What does she love? Like getting to know your wife more, and like, do you know your wife? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, that's true. I don't. Okay.
What does your wife not like to do? The dishes? Then do the dishes. Like,
yeah,
stuff like
that was another thing of like how to help your wife is like, yeah, finding out what's her least favorite chore and doing that, which is like fair. It's like, you know,
cool.
But that was the first half. That was serving your wife.
Yep.
And you know, all right, I was hoping for more roles.
We had the husband and wife, then we had a weird father and son section.
Then they went into love your wife by parenting, partnering together to build a God-centered family. And
Cat Stevens started playing, and all the daddy issues came out.
the picture has two family members holding a child.
Yeah.
It's all about passing the baton off to the next generation.
How'd you feel about the say something about your dad in one word?
Oh, that was also awkward. That was awkward. It's like, what do you expect? Is this really the time for this? I mean, unless we go deeper, really talk about the issues. You're opening up for somebody to.
My dad was a good man, blah, blah, and he's like, those of you that wouldn't say anything about your dad, what do you say? My dad was an alcoholic. My dad was an abuser.
And it's
my dad
like,
was an adulterer. It's like, what do you want your kids to say about you?
Yeah, that was kind of the thing. Was like they used it as a
cool point
of legacy. What's your legacy? And it's
cool
like,
point.
But like, that's as a Christian, shouldn't it be like, what do we want God to think about it? The focus should be on God. It's not us. It shouldn't be so focused on us. Like, I get it. That's an emotional connection that will impact some people. Like, you know, I think we do live our life to an extent of like, what does others think about us because we're selfish. But like, that's not. Should we direct it to God? And so there's a lot of that of like passing the baton and how I don't know. I felt some of it was supposed to be like, you could see it similar to like discipleship. You know, sharing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, go have babies though.
Yeah.
Like you are called to pass the baton. I'm like, we are called to have babies. And so I was joking with Dylan. It's like, but like, I
think I'm cool.
I thought that was the old thing. That was the old message of babies. I thought that was procreation was like, I think filling the earth has been filled pretty plenty. There's a lot of people on earth. So I don't know. It's one of those topics where it's like, you know, especially we're in a swing right now of less people having children right now.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting thing of like, we're called to the next generation.
We can conquer the earth.
Have a family. Wink. Make babies. You gotta have children. You gotta have an offspring.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, using it also like, what do you think your kids are gonna think about you? Like, I don't know. It was a weird way to put it.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Mm-hmm. I don't like it.
There's probably an audience that needed to hear it
The
too,
scripture that uses Proverbs 1:8, hear my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teachings. What?
Nice.
Okay.
Cherry picked.
What?
What's the context?
I guess that.
I'm not sure in Proverbs.
Kind of works with what we're saying. I don't know. That's
what was Solomon's kids like?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't know about that.
Which mother?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I know. Actually, that was a cultural thing, so it's totally okay. Totally okay. We'll talk about that. Yeah, they didn't talk about what's it called, how marriage is between one husband, one wife.
Yeah, where's the
And then talked about Bible scriptures that
Bathsheba
had
and Absalom and
multiple kids and all that. I don't know, man. There's multiple things about that where it's just like, why couldn't we talk about better stuff? Even if we're gonna talk about parenting, like, I don't know.
And then have a
It wasn't deep
parenting
enough.
section, but it's like man to man, woman to woman, like separate. Like
Yeah, you would think that
like a
would be
parenting
together.
section maybe. And I guess that might be kind of what the last section, but not really. I don't know.
The closest they talk about is because they took in questions, and some of the questions was like,
How do we?
because they mention it of like, oh, if there's parenting conflicts of like how to parent and different ideas, and that was more in the conflict of talking
Yeah.
section. They were just like, that'll happen. It's just like, and then what they did for the last section, kind of going into it, because like, all right, that was that section, and then they had a women's section, which I haven't looked through it. I
was
haven't
like,
really asked my
I'm
wife about
not
it. She just said it was
sure
good. And I was
either.
like, okay.
Allison, because I have her notes. Seems to be, it was very similar. Like it has like the exact same fill in the blanks and like help her head.
Yeah, because my wife
but
and
based
I,
on
we talked a little
the
bit about
woman's side of that relationship.
it. Yeah.
And like loving through respect.
Yeah,
Putting God
that was kind of
first.
the biggest thing that she kind of told me was like
Yeah.
not putting me down, and how that can impact other things and all that, and how to show respect in that way.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, it's
Not
good,
sure.
but
We could have had 2 guests, but we
we
didn't.
could have. We could have.
Just, hey, talk about this one section.
Yeah. Hey, come on here. All right, talk about women now. What's
Man,
that?
There's so
about?
many things we should have. I was thinking about showing up in my wedding suit this morning. I was thinking about having my wife on.
I would've
We just didn't.
actually good. I would have been down for that. Re-record. So,
Making the dream a
yeah,
reality.
we'll talk about more, but going into it, the next session real was session 9, make the dream a reality, and
The mission of
Yeah, I was gonna
marriage.
say it's more like make the dream a mission.
Yeah.
It's more like, hey, we're a ministry.
You want to join? You've been saying you want to go deeper. I have some
That's
opportunities.
kind of the thing. So it's like, all right, as we close this weekend, to remember what is going through your mind right now. And so it's hitting on things, kind of see where you're at, good stuff. And then it's like, take the next right step. When we started, we asked you, and then kind of break it down.
Yeah,
what
they
we've
had.
gone through.
This is Sunday morning. They had their not communion, offering. Will you donate to families in need?
Yeah, which I mean,
it's nice.
There's
I
a
mean,
part where I get it. It's still a ministry.
the worker
so it's
deserves his
donation.
wages, you know.
Yeah, I mean, people paid to go to this conference.
Yep.
That's kind of also my other problem with it, but whatever, is what it is.
And so coming out of the offering time, yeah, we went straight into take the next right step.
Yeah.
This is what we've taught you.
So this is what we've gone over. What if you could learn how to move closer together when you feel isolated in marriage? We believe God can help your marriage move towards oneness. And what if you could have the marriage other people, family, friends, neighbors would want for themselves? So it's just kind of hitting on those types of things. Like, all right. Yeah,
This section was short.
Yeah,
but, like,
it was short because a lot of it was talking about how you could give.
yeah.
A lot of the section was on, hey, we have other sources, we have other ministries, we have other things you can take a part of, and a lot of it was focused on that.
Join the movement. Podcasts, books, small groups, online newsletters, family life app, cruise events, local events. Yeah.
I do remember that. There was that talk. There was talk about also getting other couples, like gifting them a chance to come to this. And it's like, what if, because like they're ending with, what if your marriage could make a difference in this world? And so it's just like, oh, okay. With like, yeah, we believe your family can make a positive difference in the corner of your world and point others towards God. Grow, start where you are, gather, spend time with others heading in the same direction, and guide, pass on what you have learned. pass the baton.
Yeah.
We didn't fully mention it, but like in the sex talk, why we keep saying pass the baton is because the metaphor they used was literally like a guy in track running and passing the baton.
Yeah. And if you drop the baton,
pick it up, pick it up and go. And it's like, okay, that's fair. Yeah, the race isn't done. Keep running the race, keep trying, keep moving forward, which is fair. But also, it was funny as like a pass the baton to the next generation.
Yeah.
So. But that's where it ended.
Like
really,
a weird thing that it's not in the notes. The one guy liked to go off script.
He really.
But he
did.
was like, when you go home, you're going to have a fight because Satan doesn't want you to have good marriage to be on mission. He's like,
my wife didn't have a fight.
Like, you're going to have the next few days. You're gonna have a fight, and you're like, this was for nothing. But it's all about the journey, and he's like, that's your spouse and your enemy. Satan is, and he's like, he doesn't want you to come to these things, and he's gonna put doubts in your mind. And it was continuing on like the selling point and like other resources, but it was also like, you're gonna have all these issues because you're following Jesus, which is like cool.
They kept bringing up the fact that like, some other couples, they'll come back year after year as like not necessarily because it needs them, but because it's a good like checkup type thing, which I agree. I think that's a fair idea. Like that's not wrong. It's just one of those. It's hard to hear that when it's like, give us money.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
All right then.
It ended with us getting remarried. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Which they had us repeat typical marriage vows.
They should have. They
had everyone stand up, hold hands.
I liked it as an option. I don't like it where it's like.
Well, they were like, they were like, everyone that's married do it. They're like, if you're thinking about getting divorced, maybe this isn't the best thing for you. You need to like have conversations. Maybe if you're in premarital, like, don't do it because we don't want you to be married. If this is like your premarital, but like for like those people that were married, like they had you stand up and hold hands.
What am I supposed to say? Like,
and repeat your vows.
I'm in a spot to where my wife and I, these fast 3 days, have like, all right, here's areas where it's like, if we keep going in this direction, like, it's just gonna keep deteriorating. Like, it's not gonna be growing. It's gonna be getting worse. Yeah. So it's like, okay, these are areas that we need to actually commit with what we've been saying we want to change and actually follow up on them. And we're feeling more optimistic and we're feeling good. How am I then to be like, but like this saying our vows again? Nah. Like, that's weird. Like, I kind of have to say yes because it's like we're in a good spot and I want to like go out being like, we're gonna do it. Dude, I'm not for doing the vows again unless it's like a real thing, like a real dedication again. Nitpicks, but it was weird to be like, I wasn't expecting this. So, I didn't think this was gonna happen. I didn't think I was gonna get remarried again.
My wife and I, our personalities is we're not always super serious. Nice. So we're standing there, we're holding hands, we're repeating these vows. We're both doing like Kermit the Frog impressions, kind of. We're making funny voices. Well, yeah. And for us, like,
why not?
It was something, bonding, whatever, commitment to start new on these aspects. But for people around us, like, there are people like crying and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I see. No, I understand. Like, it's for people and so there's people that needed it. Yeah. But for my family, it was like, this is a little silly thing. Repeat after me. Yeah. Hee hee. Let's go home and have a lunch. Like. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand that. That's kind of where I was at too.
That was the conference.
Yeah. Like. I think I have one last thing about it. Yeah. Of like outside of it, but like.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Final thoughts?
Well, I'll talk about final thoughts, but in a bit. But like.
Yeah. But a couple other things.
We bought books. Ooh. We bought a book and we bought conversation cards because we got the book because it was a devotional to dig in. So like, part of our plan with like being committed to actually follow through with what we're doing is like, all right, one of them is we do want to do a devotional where we go through it together, but as I mentioned, not too long ago, I got to talk with Austin Baker, a mentor of mine that I like talking to, and with talking with him and mentioning about doing this, he also shared his experience.
Yeah.
Through doing it, and so he went 3 times with his wife. First time was he was an atheist at the time. She was still a Christian. He was an atheist who just came out of the Mormon church.
Okay.
And so had a lot of that going on. So it was 1 year into marriage. They went, and it was pretty good. You know, they did all right. I mean, this is a man where he quickly went into the military, and that made everything so much worse. Like it
was hard.
It's one of those relationships when you hear about their marriage and their story, it's like gut wrenching what his wife went through.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you look at like abuse and possible reasons to, you know, possibly divorce. Like that's definitely more in the category of like, yeah, it would have been valid. But you know, she didn't. She put up with it, and you know, they had kids through it. You know, so there's a lot of pain in their family. But so they did that. The second time they went, it was also good. And then the third time was the one where he had been a Christian at the time.
Yep.
He was going to go to BBC pretty soon, and it was 7 years ago, and they had a good time, but it was very clear who, even to them, who it was for, who this is for. And so they were like, you know what? Instead of doing this as a tune-up, why don't we just put that money towards a date?
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
That was kind of their assumption.
Yeah.
And that's because, you know, who they believe, and it's who I also believe. The intended audience of this is broken families who are about to get divorced. That's who this is
they
for.
kind of preference, like, they never like go outright say that.
Yeah.
But they in a way preference like, hey, that's,
they kind of hint to a lot of things
but
of like, hey, you guys are probably here. You know, name drop.
I was like,
I
think that's
these type of people might be here.
Who probably adds focus towards. I think the other thing that's funny to me on that, because I agree with you that like that's the focus, is everyone I know that goes to it are elders' wives, old ladies.
Yeah.
You know, those are the people that, whether it's the intended audience, they're the people that
that's who I, heard too.
You know.
And that's kind of like the interesting part. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, because like, as mentioned of the tune-up, like I can definitely see that.
And there might be some overlap there too.
I can still see that be valuable.
Yeah.
Of going in for the tune-up to the idea of re-examining where you guys are at and seeing where there are problems and take a good step forward to change. I mean, that's kind of what we also mentioned about, New Year's goal, that same idea of like you do that because it has this is a good cutoff and new break point to try differently.
Yep.
And really make good intent on those goals. And so it's like that's the same thing here. And so it's like, okay, I see that valuable. But one thing that they came out with that was good is they did get a book on one of their times. That I saw there, it was the only one I was kind of interested in, but didn't really get it because I was like, it costs money. And so it's a series called, the one I have in my hand is called For Men Only, and then they have a version for women that says For Women Only. So they got both, and they recommend it. They're like, no, this is actually good. They're like, we actually went through it. This is actually good. It's worth your time. So it's like, cool, pretty excited, because that was also my worry. It's like, I don't want to get a book and then have it be something that's like, again, similar to the conference, where it's like, it's most stuff I know. It's, I don't want to be feeling I'm wasting my time and then don't end up falling through and growing. And so getting another resource that's good. And so it's like, my wife has already read the first chapter of the women's version, and I'm going to be reading this and going through it. So it's like, okay, cool. I was really glad to get a resource, because like we got, as I mentioned, we got the convo cards. And one of the things they did at the end of your, before you got remarried at the conference, was they made sure that you scheduled a date that next week.
Yeah.
They called out people to make sure to
I
say
just kept my head
a
down
date
during all that.
and a like when you're doing it in a location. Like, what are you doing? They were
And he's
pretty
like, I'm gonna pick random people from the audience, and I was like, not me, sir.
I was like,
the whole conference was introvert friendly till the last session, and then they're like, we're gonna come out into the aisleway, and you're gonna tell me what you're doing.
You must have a date.
Like it's a class, and they're like, that's your homework, and if you didn't do the homework, I'm gonna shame you.
I was like, I don't know when our schedules always work. It fluctuates. I don't know. But you know, that scheduled date on that one, we did end up actually doing our convo cards. So that was cool to finally put it to use.
Yeah, put some
paid money for it.
Use into it.
I want to use it or lose it. So
I'll have to get out the pod decks.
You got to get the pod decks and compare and contrast. But I mean, the conference in general, again, good and bad. Good. I mean, it was a great moment for me to meet with my wife, and I think this sums it up great with one of the phrases they said a few times that I think is very important. Is they said the most important things that will be said during this conference is not anything we say, but what you guys say to get to each other. And it's like, that's the biggest point of this, is making time for each other, spending time to talk about some of these things and re-examine, self-analyze, and make a plan to work towards something new and growing. And so like that was the best thing. That was good for my wife and I to actually set aside time and do that, and have this break off moment to actually strive for some of the goals we've had in a better way. And so, you know, still was good. I feel bad saying this since it was a gift, but it is one of those where I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't pay for this though. Like it's one of those where it's like, but it was still a good time. Like, it was a good time. It was worth it. I feel really good from it. Would I do it again though? The closest I'd rather do the what I've heard of Austin Baker and their plan of like, nah, we're just gonna put that money towards a date.
Yep, like a bigger vacation or whatever date. Yep, that's kind of where we're at too. I was like, likes for us, like as you were saying, my wife and I, we have 2 different jobs. She has school. We see each other often because we're in the same house, but like we don't have a lot of overlap time some weeks. Yeah, and that's kind of the killer, right? And that's been the killer for us, is we'll have that, and because so much of my times are flexible and just I tend to just work all the time. That is, you know, and I discuss this with my wife so that we can break it down, we can have an understanding and try to find a new way to do it. And like that was the thing, is also it's like, we don't have time together, and it's like we try, but it's like it's not good. And so that's the biggest thing we're working on, is going to make a priority for the time together. And then so I like I said, I loved we did the hotel route, and so it was nice to get away with my wife and just have no work, no whatever, just together. It's not made for this, but what was also cool about it is my parents were there and people from our church were there and you guys were there, and we all have different schedules too. Like you and I don't always match up, like mom and dad and mine don't. So it's nice to have some community that way. I thought it was like, it had a good... We also did a healthy balance, like, at least for us, it definitely wasn't like distracting. Like it wasn't like we were sitting by each other just making jokes the whole time. No. Like it was still done in a way to where we had the separation of still getting to take in what the conference had and invest. We had to go for a walk. My relationship, and then during the men's our talk, breaks. If I wasn't with my wife, then maybe we'll go on our walk or whatever.
Like, can you get a load of this?
But I think I'm the same way, where like, and I understand like why like conference ministry, crusade ministry, it has to be this way. Maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe have to is the wrong word. But like the wanting more because it's so basic information.
Yeah.
In some ways,
it's basic to us.
Yeah.
I've heard of this a lot where it's like, it's hard to understand how much more knowledge you have than somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to say this in a way of like being prideful. Like, I don't want to be like big head and be like, oh, I know all this stuff. But like, to some degree, there was a point where I didn't know this stuff. Yeah. And so it's like, there's a lot of people who don't. And they need to hear that too.
What I guess was a nitpick for me is like, it's like if you want to go deeper, buy it.
Yeah, and I was like,
I said, like the books
why did I buy
deeper.
The conference? I was like, what?
Like the books go deeper, the podcast, the ministry goes deeper.
It's like, that's the thing where it's like I didn't pay for it, but if I had paid to go to the conference and then I heard that would have made me more upset.
Yeah.
But still a good time. I think
it was a good thing. My wife got a grade out of it.
I still recommend this to people. Like, if they haven't gone before, like it's still good for a one-time go.
We have,
even if you do know,
friends that
it's still a good opportunity to
that way
set aside time to do this.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, it's still worth it. But I don't know. I'm probably not gonna go it again.
Yeah.
But one thing we didn't mention that I did like they did on the last session was they took in questions.
Yeah.
So questions of people who wanted certain things that weren't covered, which is still kind of like answered. Kind of is what it is. I mean, they get a bunch of questions. They're gonna consolidate it into like broad terms, which makes sense. That's definitely an understandable way to do it. But like the thing I liked more was also how they were talking about how they're working on it.
Yep.
So they're not like. They didn't just like, all right, cool, that is what it is.
This
they
is where you should
mention
be
that, like,
if you're not doing this.
We're going to be like, if there's things that get talked about plenty, which I assume happened with the blending family.
Yeah.
This, like, step family section. Like, I think that was added because it probably got asked about a lot, because it is, like, becoming more and more common of a situation. So it's like, yeah, no, it makes sense that eventually became a session. And so hopefully, they keep molding and changing with what is the need of the audience. So it doesn't just get stagnant and then becomes not really valuable. But that was our experience.
Yeah.
So passing crummies because we did nothing wrong ever.
Never.
Ministry shout out. I don't think it's any shocker. But it's family life. So they do have other things than just the conference.
Yep.
They have podcasts and etc.
And they want to develop godly families who change the world one piece at a time. Saw that in the conference.
Huzzah!
And then they want every home to be a godly home.
Huzzah!
It's just helping families, whether it's children, marriage conferences, whatever, just follow closer to God and also go through the world that we live in.
Yeah, it's a good goal. So
good ministry.
Yeah, check it out if you want. I mean, there's different things you might find, like a podcast or something you might like. You don't need to donate to them. I'm pretty confident they have a donation option. So if you do feel led to do that, definitely do that. But at the very least, as we ask all the time, we ask just at the very least that you pray. You pray for the ministry, you pray that it's impactful and that God uses it, as always. And that's it for us.
All right, signing out.
See you guys next week when we talk about our next thing, when we
go deeper on sex.
When we go deeper on fighting our wives and how we're the dominant one. We're the head of the family and our wife is the neck.
So weird.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.